I'm Alan Wardis, and this is Think Radio Presents Think Business. My guest today is entrepreneur, social media expert, and elected official Leia Morrison.
I think it was just, kind of evolutionary that we come back to story, like you said at the beginning, sitting around a campfire.
Yeah.
There's a reason I chose that name, the social firekeeper, because there is so much power in keeping story alive, and sharing story. And we crave it.
Welcome to another great conversation on Think Radio.
Think Business is made possible by funding from the ICE Lab at Western, supporting innovative business in the rural Southwest.
If you like Think Business, then I know you'll enjoy the other shows in the Think Radio Presents family of podcasts. Think People, a celebration of just how amazing people can be. Think Planet, conversations with thought leaders on important environmental issues. Subscribe to Think Radio Presents on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever else you get great content. And don't forget to help us spread the word by liking our social media channels and sharing the content we post. We're grateful to have you in the conversation on Think Radio Presents. Welcome back to the show. Before we get started today, I want to remind you again to go to thinkradiopresents.com. There you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter. It's got all kinds of cool content in it that you won't get anywhere else, including, easy access to all of our episodes. You can also, while you're there, click the patreon.com link and become a Think Radio Presents patron. We depend on listeners like you to help us keep the lights on around here. So thinkradiopresents.com. Go there and help us out. My guest today is entrepreneur, social media expert, and elected official Leia Morrison. Morrison is a digital marketing manager and the founder and owner of her own social media management firm called Social Firekeeper. She's also a social media marketing consultant for the Colorado Small Business Development Center. If that weren't enough, Morrison is also a certified yoga instructor and personal fitness trainer and coach with another company of her own called Rocky Mountain Yogini. But wait, there's more. Morrison is also a member of the Gunnison, Colorado City Council and sits on the boards of numerous organizations in her community. Leia, I'm honestly grateful that you could find the time to come by and talk with me today. It's good to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I want to start off by saying I think the name of your company is really cool, Social Firekeeper. Mm-hmm. I mean, that just evokes this image of the light of the campfire that people have been gathered around for millennia. And here we are adjusting to a new kind of light, this social, digital, brave new media world, and you're capitalizing on that. I think that's super cool. I also want to start off by saying, I've had entrepreneurs in here and people who give advice to entrepreneurs. And we've talked a lot about what's called a serial entrepreneur, people who do one company after another. But here you are, you've got this whole twist on serial entrepreneurialism. You're doing them all at once. Mm-hmm. What is that like?
Well, it's fun. It keeps me engaged. It keeps my creative desires flowing, and I get to work with awesome people. So I'm definitely a person of passion. I like lots of different things. I loved school when I was in college. I absolutely loved it. I could have been a career student for sure, just going from one major to the next. That would have been fine with me.
Okay,
so
well,
it makes
that actually
sense.
explains it.
Yeah.
So you're just in multiple classes at once.
Right. Yeah.
And each one with its own curriculum and syllabus. But some of those people who've been in here say it's kind of a mistake to do too many things at once. I mean, that's kind of like entrepreneurialism 101,
Mm-hmm.
is you don't do more than one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm.
What's your answer to that?
My answer is if you decide to live in a very tiny mountain town, and career opportunities are slim. You get creative, but you become, most importantly with all of those, is you become a very good manager of time. So if you are disorganized, if you chase butterflies easily, probably not the best career path to have multiple businesses.
Right, stick to one.
Yes.
Or stick to a day job.
Or stick to a day job. And those, I am not a day job person. I've done it. I've tried it. That's actually what led me to my social media management business was several 9-to-5 jobs in the marketing field. And I'm not a 9-to-5er. I don't enjoy it. It's not where I thrive.
Well, okay, so let's stop there for a second.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people would say, I'm not a 9-to-5er. I don't enjoy my 9-to-5 job. I don't like sitting at my desk all day. But so I've still got to do it.
Sure.
That's just the way the world is. That's the way things work. What is it about you that made you say, no, I'm really not a 9-to-5er? What was it about that you said it was just intolerable?
I guess when I really started diving deep into reading Success Magazine and reading, all these entrepreneurs that had made it big and had done it, they all kind of had that in common, that idea of kicking the what's expected to the side and going for it. And so that's kind of how I live my life is come up with a goal, figure out how you're going to get there, and go do it.
Yeah, well, so the purpose of the question really is to speak to those people, as I said, who would also identify with that.
Yeah.
But they're like, I can't do that. That's not for me.
And it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
That the honest truth is it really isn't for everyone. We do need the 9-to-5ers. However, with the age that we're in with digital technology and communications, we are finding so many possibilities now. There's so many location-neutral jobs out there at this point. And so that whole idea of a 9-to-5 is blurring,
Well, it is. And in fact, the trends identified by researchers point in the direction of what they're calling the gig economy, where more and more and more people are earning a greater share of their income outside of a traditional job. But in your experience, how do you know if you're that person who really just ought to consider making the leap?
I would have to say the school of hard knocks, trial and error. You have to see if you've got the grit to do that because it's hard. You have to be very disciplined, like I said, with your time, with your organization. You have to keep yourself focused, which is not for everybody. Some people, thrive in an office where they have a team and they have a boss, showing them the path that they're going to go down. So, you would have to dip your toe in and try it.
And it's kind of an X factor, but you've also got to be comfortable with some uncertainty.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Right? Or if not comfortable, at least willing to go there.
I would almost say comfortable with the uncomfortable. You have to get okay with being uncomfortable. And that's for pretty much everything that I do, whether it's city council or as a fitness coach, personal trainer, a yoga teacher. All of those things, you have to be willing to go towards the discomfort.
And part of that discomfort is just the fear that it's not actually going to work.
Absolutely.
That you're going to make this investment of time and effort and creativity and almost certainly money. And you may not get any of that back.
No, and you may fail miserably and you may lose a ton of money. But again, if you go back and start reading the stories of the, Fortune 500 people, they have those stories.
They all did that.
Millions lost many times when they first started. And it's, again, do you have what it takes to keep going when it gets hard?
Yeah, I think the statistic these days is that 9 out of 10 startups will fail.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe within the first 5 years, something like that. But what's sort of buried in that number is how many of them get up and try again.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you get your one shot, you're in the 9 of 10 and you have to go back and you never get another try.
Right.
No, you can pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and try it again. Have you failed at a business?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't necessarily call it a failure, but I did. I ran a yoga studio for 9 years, owned it, full class schedule. I think we had up to 38 classes a week. And I think at one point I was up to 18 teachers. And for a small mountain town, that's a pretty big deal.
Sure.
And I'd had to come to a point where I really had to put myself up against the mirror and say, is this working?
Mm-hmm.
Not only is this working financially, which it wasn't, but also is this working for me anymore and for my teachers and my students? And it wasn't. So I had to make the hard call, and it's hard. That's your baby. When you start
Sure.
a business, it's your baby, and you
Yeah.
never want to give up.
No.
So I probably got out, like most people will tell you, later than I should have. I should have called the shots, and closed it up a little earlier. But it was a learning experience. They're all learning experiences.
Well, yeah, that's a good point right there. I mean, that is the point. What did you learn from that experience that you're now profiting from in your current businesses?
I really learned that for my yoga and for my personal training and my online fitness, that I wanted to expand farther. I wanted my reach to grow farther than it could in my little yoga studio in Gunnison.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm growing, pretty much a global reach, which is really cool and fun, and not ego-wise. It's more of for others. I mean, I think about the lives I can enhance and make healthier. I can do it in such a greater way now.
Well, okay, which brings us to the segue to talk about digital marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And not just marketing, but digital delivery of a product like yours.
Mm-hmm.
15 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to do that.
Definitely not.
That's incredibly rapid transformation of the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
As somebody who's in there trying to not just capitalize on it for your own businesses and your product, but you've made a business out of helping other people capitalize on it. What are your observations of this incredibly paradigm-shifting transformation that society is going through as a result of digital access to stuff online?
Well, that's a big question because there's lots of implications. Of course, the negative are often discussed, lack of personal interaction, and all of a sudden everything about you or your business is online and you're exposed.
And it's online forever.
And it's
Once
online
up there.
forever. So there's the negative pieces, and we can't ignore those. You do have to be aware that that's out there. But I think the exciting part is that, again, you could live anywhere in the world. I have a dream of living on a boat half the year, in the middle of the ocean. And I can do that, with the way technology is. I don't have to be bound to four walls anymore. And so for me, that's the super exciting part. And then the piece of, that addressing personal relationships, now folks that probably don't have the opportunity to communicate outside their four walls, perhaps. Maybe they live in a very tiny town. Maybe they, have some disability that is keeping them at home. Now their world has opened up, for communication, for commerce, for everything. So I find it more fascinating than than negative.
Well, it reminds me of the gold rush, right? Everybody with a shovel headed west in those days. Very few of them actually, struck gold and made their fortune. There are some similarities because there's this rush into the digital world. And yes, it's opening up all those opportunities that you're talking about. And yet, the reality is, just putting up a website.
Oh no, that's not going to do it.
doesn't just getting a mule and a shovel and heading west didn't guarantee you a thing.
Yeah, you better have a guide. You better have a map. You better know what the weather's like.
Yeah, know something about what you're doing.
Yeah.
So for all of those people who they are sitting in their kitchen right now and they're mapping out and they're saying, "Oh, it's a brave new world. I can be visible." What are the realities that you sort of coach your clients on when you first sit down with them?
Vulnerability. You have to be okay with kind of putting it all out there. People know right away if it's a facade, right? The BS meter is acute for most folks when it comes to digital.
You talk about online material. You come to the
Whether
website.
You have to show you now as a business. It's not just a catchy jingle, on a commercial that people see. People want to see raw. They want to see you. They want to know that your product is genuine, that you are ethical. People do a lot more research now, I believe, on products, whether that be a service or an actual physical product. They're doing their homework. They want to know.
They can. I mean, a Google search, product review.
Yeah,
I can see what other people are saying.
Yeah, they want to know if your sweatshirt is, made by child laborers, overseas. They will do the research to find out where you're getting your dye for your fabric. It's really fascinating how much you just have to be honest. I really feel like
what an innovation.
I know, isn't that strange?
In marketing.
Yeah.
Well, you read a lot about that these days. In fact, that advertising itself has gone through a major shift. That people are voting with their clicks. They're voting with their subscriptions even. Places like Netflix that are thriving. And part of their offering is, we're not going to interrupt your content with advertising anymore. And people are willing to pay for that.
Sure.
That has forced people in business, if you're wanting to launch a new business, to think very carefully about your story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're in the trenches doing this for yourself and for others. What is it about story that has become so important now, where it really wasn't 30 years ago?
Well, I think we just got so far away from it. It's the same thing with the outdoors and why, for so many decades, it's like we separated ourselves from it. And there's a piece of us inside, I think, core of us that we need the outdoors. We need stories. We need connection. And I think for so many decades, we got away from that. Everything was canned and packaged, and you sat in a cubicle, and that wasn't us.
Yeah.
So I think it was just, kind of evolutionary that we come back to story, like you said at the beginning, sitting around a campfire.
Yeah.
There's a reason I chose that name, the social firekeeper, because there is so much power in keeping story alive, and sharing story. And we crave it.
So one of the criticisms that you've already alluded to, I think, about online community, it almost seems like an oxymoron when you say it like that. But the fact is, that's where people are going for community more and more. One of the criticisms is that it's fake. It's easy to show the world any face that you want them to see. And we never show our hard days. We only show ourselves on the beach.
Yep.
In your opinion, is that criticism warranted, first of all? And secondly, is it being offset by a net positive benefit in some way? How would you analyze that problem that when you were sitting around the fire in the old days, you were actually there, you were actually with the people. Now the fire is virtual. Mm-hmm. There are these dangers. How do you assess that?
Well, I think, number one, it's a legitimate argument for the negatives. And I would say that, again, it's almost evolutionary. I think you're seeing it even in the last, 5 to 8 years socially. It was very plastic. It was very, let's only show the perfection. But you're seeing now more people are showing the cracks. They're showing their hardships and their bad days. Mm-hmm. I know at least with, the online coaching business, some of the most successful coaches I know are coaches that freely share their struggles, because we all want to see ourselves in someone, Mm-hmm. I mean, we want to connect with people like us, and no one is perfection, no one. So if you only show perfection and you're trying to draw an audience, it's not going to have any longevity.
Well, as you said, the BS meter is very, very sensitive, and that starts to sound like BS. It's like,
yeah. And I think that social media started off very, like I said, very plastic, very, let's just show the facade and hope, what's behind door number 2 doesn't actually get shown to the public. But I think that's shifted for sure. And then repeat the second part of your question.
Well, just are those dangers being offset in your mind by positive benefits? Mm-hmm. So in other words, it's worth it to take that risk that what we're seeing is not the whole truth because we're receiving X.
Oh, I think there's so much access to amazing, positive stuff out there, things that you aren't seeing on your regular news channel, like podcasts like this, It's, as you say, there's so much doom and gloom out there in the regular news. And there's so much more goodness, and we just...
So true.
It's not, a light is not shown on it unfortunately, for a lot of big media. Yeah. And so I would say that's a definite positive to offset some of that negative.
Yeah. And so if I'm a new business, and I'm trying to wade into this gold rush with sort of Wild West rules, really, we're still figuring it all out.
Every day.
Give me my top 3 opportunities that I need to seize right now. And then also tell me the top 3 things I really need to avoid.
Okay. So I'm going to need some more information.
Business. Okay, I'm a business. Let's say I've got an actual product to sell.
Okay.
Some widget that I've done my research and I think the world needs. I've figured out that people will pay me for it. And I want to use social media to get there.
Okay. So top 3 things you would need to do is, so you've done your research and there's no other product like yours?
Right.
Okay.
I'm in that perfect entrepreneur. I feel like I've
done all the groundwork.
I've got an A+ in getting to where I am right now. Uh-huh. Let's go.
Okay. Hire really good people because I think the number one mistake a new business does is they try to do it all themselves. And there's too much out there, too many possibilities that you could easily miss out on.
You're specifically talking about social media.
Social media.
Hire people who know what they're doing.
Yes. Hire people, because so many people will tell me, new businesses in particular, like, well, I have a friend or I have a cousin or I know a student who may be able to do this. Not that, any of those options are terrible.
Yeah.
But there are professionals out there.
Because this is a profession.
Right. Yes. And
not a hobby.
it is an absolutely legitimate means of marketing your product. So that would be my number one, is hire people that know what they're doing. The second would be invest in advertising, because social media is a dog-eat-dog world, and as Facebook algorithms change, and Instagram and Twitter and
Every day,
everything
by the
else
way.
constantly changing, you have to pay to play. And that changed, 2.5, 3 years ago when they went public, especially Facebook went public. So don't be afraid and set a marketing budget. I often talk to new businesses that say, oh, sure, I'm going to spend some money on social media. And I say, okay, exactly how much? And they kind of go, well, And you really need to just like you would any other line item of a budget, budget your social media marketing dollars.
Right.
And thirdly, be prepared to pivot, So you put your money in one platform, say, or one campaign. The beauty of social media is that you can watch that campaign as it's progressing and decide, you know what, this is not right. We didn't hit our demographics correctly. We're not getting to the people we want. You can pivot. You can cancel that campaign. You can change your your markers as far as who you're trying to hit. So that is the beauty. You don't just go to a graphic designer anymore, make an ad, and let it run in the magazine or whatever. I mean, you still do that. But as far as social media, you can change midstream. So that's pretty...
3 times a day if you feel like it.
as many times as you want. So.
Well, and let's add a fourth.
Okay.
Give it time.
Give it time. Yes, definitely.
Because
when you're brand new, it's, like I said, it's very competitive, depending on, your product, your market, and give it some time.
we all hear stories about things going viral, and we think that they put it up at 8 a.m. that morning, and by 4 p.m. it had a million views. It really just doesn't work that way, does it?
No. I mean, a great company to look at is Red Bull. So Red Bull, as you know, is a sports drink, right? Energy drink. And when they first started off, it was really cool, beautiful graphic campaigns in, outdoor magazines and things like that, and some commercials. And then we saw them pivot to social media at one point, and they blew up YouTube. I mean, their video content is fascinating. It's so engaging. It's so fantastic.
Because they show people doing crazy stuff all over the world.
Oh, all the time. Yeah. And just, shot well. It's professional. It makes you want to drink a Red Bull and get on a mountain bike and,
But that wasn't
do
an
crazy
accident.
things.
They spent a lot of money on that.
Absolutely.
They spent a lot of time developing that. It wasn't.
It was not overnight. No, they didn't go viral overnight.
Okay, so where are the landmines buried?
The landmines are probably buried again in that budget piece where people don't prepare financially for social media investment. Getting caught up in the negative. So, like I said, you have to be vulnerable if you're going to put yourself out there on social media. And I myself and businesses I've helped manage have experienced negative feedback. It happens. Like it's going to happen. Haters are going to hate, People are out there ready to give you a bad review, a 1-star review. They're there and they're going to happen. And so I see it a lot where people want to, oh, Leah, pull this content, pull this review, take this, off of the site. I said, just let it happen.
Sure.
Just let it happen and watch all of your supporters come into your defense, because that's what ends up happening is, if it's a legitimate complaint, you're a restaurant and you get the steak was undercooked, like reach out. That's your opportunity to say, hey, let me rectify that situation. Let me fix it and come back and I'll get you a new free steak. Like it's a great opportunity, but so many people find it appalling because, they put a little bit of themselves out there and it was critiqued. So I would say embrace the negative and don't run from it. And trust that your people that love your product or content are going to come to your rescue.
and just concentrate on being the best at what you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome advice. I think that will really be helpful to a lot of people who are looking at this Wild West landscape and going, I'm going to stay home. But they don't have to.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to pivot to a whole different conversation right now, a whole different topic. And that is to talk about you as a businesswoman. We sometimes see a lot. Well, rightly so. We see a lot about income inequality in the corporate world and so forth and so on. We see a lot of profiles in the media about women in business. I want to ask you, do you think that's justified? Do you think there is something sort of unique and special about being a woman in business?
So we're not getting into politics, just business. Okay.
Just business.
Okay, all right.
We can get there if you want.
That's another hour and a half conversation. So I do think, yes, there's some legitimacy. I have, because I've created what I've created for myself, I don't experience that inequality like other friends do. I do have friends, though, that are in the corporate world, and they absolutely make, $10,000 less a year than the guy they're managing sometimes. Or, they take on more, jobs within their job and never get raises. So, yeah, I definitely believe it exists. However, I myself, because I've created what I've created, I don't experience that.
Well, that's where I was headed with this question is, do you think that entrepreneurialism is an answer?
Absolutely.
Essentially, to this cultural thing that we just seem to be stuck in. It's at times it seems like such an uphill battle to try to alter corporate culture or business culture. I shouldn't just call it corporate. Because it's found lots of different places, lots of different levels of business. What does any of that follow you into the world where you're the boss and you own the business? Are you still fighting some cultural thing that makes it an uphill battle for you?
Yes, in small regards. So my husband and I also own a couple other businesses. And when I do help with those or get calls on those, it's always, oh, where's your husband? Oh, do you need to talk to your husband first? And I laugh. I'm like, no, I've got it. I can answer your question. It exists. I do think it's getting a little better. I think.
Why? What can you point to say that?
I think because we're calling him out on it now. I mean, when I get those kind of comments, I will usually try to shine a little light on the ignorance and not
say,
embarrass them.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, not embarrass them, because it's a generational thing sometimes, and it's I try not to embarrass the person, but just shine a little light and let them know that I can make the decisions just as well as the man can.
It seems such an obvious thing to say, but here we are still having to say it.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's what we would say to those men who are still sort of stuck there. What would you say to the women who are there? They're in their office. They're doing more for less. What's your advice to them?
I'm kind of a broken record on this one, and that is invest in personal development. So I have a very daily routine that I've had for quite some time now, where I invest an hour of my day, first thing in the morning, on me. And that includes reading something inspirational. Usually it's either personal development or it's business development. And then I meditate or sit quietly. I do some form of exercise or yoga. And that's how I start my day. And it sounds silly and maybe a little woo-woo, so basic. But I tell you, that practice has given me so much more than I ever thought it would in terms of confidence and direction.
Sets the tone for the day.
Absolutely. You know, I do goal setting during this time. I journal sometimes. So I think every single person, whether you're male or female, would benefit from adding a morning routine in. And honestly, I think it would be a better world. I think that we would all be able to communicate better with one another and, quite frankly, keep our you-know-what together.
Yeah. Well, be a little less cranky at least.
Yeah.
To start the day.
Well, it's just this idea of living more mindfully, you know? I mean, whether it is mindfully eating your lunch or mindfully driving or,
Yeah.
you know, all the things that we do day to day, if we could just do it a little more mindfully, I think that it would just be a better world.
Well, these ideas are catching on.
They are,
More
absolutely.
and more. There are more and more people.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the popular book, The Miracle Morning.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That had millions of followers signing on and saying...
that's Hal Elrod's book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People leaving their testimonials saying, oh my gosh, this changed my life.
Absolutely.
Such a simple thing.
Such a simple thing. So that would be my advice for any woman, since we're going back to your question, any woman who is perhaps questioning that ability to rise, you know, because it's us at the end of the day, you know, it's every individual's decision whether they're going to sit there and take it or do something about it. And I think that what we're missing is some personal development. You know, we work on our abs, we work on our, you know, loose hamstrings, we work on our tans, we work on all this stuff. But like, when do we do like the little excavations inside?
My attitude.
Yeah, it's just,
you know?
It's so bizarre that it's the thing closest to us, but it's the first thing we forget about.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my advice.
Excellent advice. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I want to promise to have you back to talk about women in politics.
Oh, okay.
Because I think that's a whole different conversation, as you've
It
alluded
is
to.
definitely a whole different
I would love to know
conversation.
your perspective on that subject. Leah, thanks for coming by and spending
Thank you,
time with me
Alan.
today.
It was great.
Thanks for watching. Join us next week for another great conversation on Think Radio Presents Think Business.